Abraham Lincoln once said, "Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." When Abraham Lincoln stood on the battlefield of Gettysburg in 1863, surrounded by the graves of thousands who had given their lives for freedom, he uttered these immortal words not as mere rhetoric, but as a solemn promise. It was more than a speech. It was a vision for humanity, a declaration of faith in the power of ordinary people to shape their own destiny. In those few lines, Lincoln defined democracy not as a system of government, but as a living spirit, something born from the hearts of men and women who believe that freedom, equality, and justice are worth dying for. What does it mean when Lincoln says of the people? It means that the true power of any nation begins not with its rulers, not with its wealth, not even with its armies, but with its people. A government of the people is one whose roots are buried deep in the soil of its citizens' trust, values, and collective will. It reminds us that a nation is not a structure of stone and law alone. It is built from the courage, compassion, and conscience of its people. The true foundation of democracy is not marble, but moral conviction. And when he said, "by the people," he reminded the world that freedom must never be passive. It is not enough to be governed. We must be the governors of our own fate. Every vote, every voice, every act of participation, no matter how small, is a thread in the great tapestry of democracy. It is the belief that each individual, no matter how humble, holds within them a spark of sovereignty. The moment we stop participating, the moment we stop caring, that spark begins to fade, and the darkness of tyranny grows closer. Democracy is not a gift handed down, it is a duty carried forward. Then there is the third phrase for the people. This is perhaps the most powerful part of all. It declares that government exists not for the glory of a few, not for the enrichment of the powerful, but for the well-being of every soul under its care. It means policies must serve the hungry as well as the rich, the weak as well as the strong, the unheard as well as the influential. A true democracy measures its greatness not by how high the privileged rise, but by how well it lifts the fallen. Lincoln spoke these words during one of the darkest chapters in American history. The nation was tearing itself apart in a brutal civil war, brother against brother, state against state. Many believed that the idea of self-government had failed, that democracy was too fragile to survive the test of human greed and hatred. But Lincoln, standing on that blood-soaked ground, believed otherwise. He believed that the sacrifice of the soldiers at Gettysburg would not be in vain, that through their death, a new birth of freedom would arise. And so, when he said, "shall not perish from the earth," it was not merely a hope, but a vow. He was telling the world that as long as there are people willing to stand for justice, to defend truth, to protect one another's dignity, democracy will endure. It may stumble, it may fall, but it will rise again, because it is not a system made of paper and ink, but a flame that burns in the hearts of the free. If we look at our world today, more than a century later, Lincoln's words still echo with haunting relevance. We live in an age where the voices of the people are often drowned out by noise, corruption, and manipulation. Power sometimes bends toward greed, and truth is often buried beneath waves of misinformation. But the essence of Lincoln's message is that democracy is not something that lives in government halls. It lives in us. It is in the courage to speak when others stay silent, to act when others hesitate, to care when others turn away. Every act of honesty, every stand for justice, every refusal to surrender to cynicism, these are the ways we keep that promise alive. To be part of a government of the people means to remember that we are the authors of our own history. Each citizen carries a small piece of that sacred responsibility. The ballot box is not just a place where we vote. It is an altar where we renew the covenant between ourselves and our nation. The laws we obey are not chains but choices, the product of our collective conscience. And when that conscience falters, it is upon us to awaken it again. Lincoln's vision also teaches us humility. Power, when it ceases to serve, becomes oppression. Leadership, when it forgets its duty to the people, becomes tyranny. Every ruler, every president, every leader who remembers these words, "For the people will govern with compassion, not arrogance, with justice, not ambition." Because the moment a government forgets whom it serves, it ceases to be a democracy. There is another profound truth hidden within Lincoln's words. Democracy is not just a form of governance, it is a reflection of human dignity. To say that all people deserve a voice is to recognize that every human being, regardless of race, status, or birth, carries infinite worth. That is the moral foundation of freedom. When we silence one voice, we weaken all. When we lift one soul, we strengthen all. Lincoln's phrase also invites us to think about our personal responsibility in sustaining the idea of democracy. It's easy to think that freedom is someone else's concern, that it belongs to politicians, judges, or activists. But Lincoln reminds us that the endurance of democracy depends on the daily choices of ordinary people. When we choose empathy over indifference, truth over comfort, courage over convenience, we defend the very idea that shall not perish from the earth. He believed that the fight for freedom was not just an American struggle, but a human one. Across all nations and ages, wherever people have risen to demand their rights, the spirit of those words has guided them. From civil rights movements to revolutions for independence, from peaceful protests to acts of conscience, Lincoln's vision lives on that power belongs not to the few, but to the many. Not to the rulers, but to the ruled. Even in our own lives, the message remains timeless. Each of us has our own government of the self, a way we lead our own hearts and choices. When we govern ourselves with wisdom, fairness, and compassion, we embody the same principles Lincoln spoke of. Leadership begins not with commanding others, but with mastering one's own integrity. In times of despair, Lincoln's words remind us that democracy is an act of faith. Faith in people's ability to rise above division, to learn, to forgive, to grow. It is a belief that even when humanity stumbles, we can still find our way back to the light. That faith sustained Lincoln through war, loss, and tragedy, and it can sustain us too. So today, when we hear his words, "Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth," let us not treat them as relics of the past, but as a call to action in the present. Let them challenge us to be better citizens, better neighbors, better human beings. Let them remind us that the survival of freedom depends not on the strength of our armies or the wealth of our nations, but on the strength of our hearts. As long as there are people who believe in justice, as long as there are voices that dare to speak for what is right, as long as there are hearts that refuse to surrender to hate, Lincoln's vision will never perish. The flame he lit on that field in Gettysburg still burns today, in every soul that chooses courage over fear, truth over lies, and unity over division. And so, the next time you think of those words, remember that they are not just about politics, they are about purpose. They are a reminder that history's greatest governments, movements, and revolutions began not with power, but with people. People like you, people who believe that together we can shape a future worthy of freedom itself. Because democracy, true democracy, will not perish, as long as we, the people, choose to keep it alive.